Egypt reaffirms its position is firm on the importance of rebuilding the Gaza Strip. Lebanese Prime Minister designate Nawaf Salam commits to forming a government focused on unity, competence and effective governance. And the UNHCR urges donors to expedite payments after the Trump administration froze hundreds of millions of dollars in aid. It's 8 p.m. Cairo local time and you're now watching Q News. We begin this bulletin with the latest developments in Lebanon. Egypt has reaffirmed its position is firm on the importance of rebuilding the Gaza Strip. Egyptian Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli has stated Cairo continues its efforts to ensure full implementation of the ceasefire agreement in the Gaza Strip and the exchange of detainees. Palestine has rejected U.S. President Donald Trump's proposal to take over the Gaza Strip and resettle Palestinians elsewhere. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas said he will not allow the rights of his people, for which they have struggled for decades, to be infringed upon. Abbas stressed that the Gaza Strip is an integral part of the Palestinian land alongside the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Jordan's King Abdullah II has received Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in Al Husseiniya Palace in Amman, where they met along other officials. During the meeting, the king underscored the need to stop settlement activities, expressing rejection of any attempts to annex land or displace Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, calling for supporting the steadfastness of Palestinians on their lands. He also renewed the call to maintain the Gaza ceasefire and to maximize the delivery of humanitarian aid to all parts of the Strip. The king also urged the international community to take on a more efficient role towards de-escalation in the West Bank, ending the violations of Muslim and Christian holy sites in Jerusalem. The UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan and Jordanian King Abdullah II have stressed on the importance of the two-state solution as the path to just and comprehensive peace. The UAE President stressed during the call with the Jordanian King the need to work intensively to enhance stability in the region and prevent the expansion of the circle of conflicts. Saudi Arabia has said it would not establish ties with Israel without the creation of a Palestinian state. A statement from the Saudi Foreign Ministry said Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has affirmed the kingdom's position in a clear and explicit manner that does not allow for any interpretation under any circumstances. The statement also said Saudi Arabia also rejects any attempts to displace the Palestinians from their land, adding that its stance towards the Palestinians is non-negotiable. U.S. President Donald Trump's controversial proposal to assume control of Gaza and resettle its population has sparked widespread condemnation across the Middle East and internationally, heightening tensions in the region.
United States and the Prime Minister of the State of Israel.
U.S. President Donald Trump made a contentious statement regarding the future of the Gaza Strip during a meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House. Trump proposed that the United States assume control of Gaza, overseeing the removal of bombs and weapons in the war-ravaged territory. Referring to Gaza as a demolition site, he suggested permanently resettling its Palestinian population in neighboring countries such as Jordan and Egypt.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site.
His remarks came amid high-stakes discussions on the Gaza ceasefire, U.S.-Saudi relations, and strategies to counter Iranian influence in the region. The proposal drew immediate condemnation across the Middle East and beyond. Hamas rejected the notion of U.S. control over Gaza, while Jordan's parliament denounced it as a violation of international law. On the global stage, China, Russia, the United Kingdom, and Spain expressed opposition, reiterating their commitment to a two-state solution. In the United States, political figures also criticized the proposal. Democratic Senator Chris Murphy condemned the idea, stating a U.S. invasion of Gaza would lead to the slaughter of thousands of U.S. troops and decades of war in the Middle East. Prime Minister Netanyahu responded by reaffirming Israel's dedication to peace, emphasizing the importance of regional stability. However, with Palestinian groups and neighboring countries strongly resisting any plans for resettlement or forced displacement, tensions in the region remain high, and the risk of further conflict persists. The widespread condemnation of President Trump's proposal underscores the complexities of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the challenges inherent in seeking a resolution that ensures lasting peace and stability in the Middle East.
And for more analysis, we now move to Hela in our newsroom. Hela.
Thank you very much, Hani. And for further analysis, we're joined from Cairo by Al Ahram newspaper managing editor, Mr. Ashraf El Ashri. Welcome to Q News, sir. Let me start by asking you, how is the U.S. proposal to take control of Gaza and facilitate the displacement of its Palestinian residents being received by the international community, including Arab states and human rights organizations?
Good evening to you and to your esteemed viewers. There's no doubt that this is deemed unrealistic and unapplicable, and up till this moment, all of the world countries denounced and rejected by the Arab countries, the LAS, the OIC, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt, the first, as well as the EU and Jordan. EU has Germany that support an ally of Israel rejecting the displacement and as well as the US control of Gaza. This statement hasn't addressed positively by the international community, are not in the favor of preserving the international peace and security, and also ignite the Middle East for very important tensions and an unprecedented escalation, as Trump would never found any support or approval internationally and regionally, and therefore this seems useless. And no way. Who's gonna evacuate 1.5 million from Gaza outside, and how is it going to be transported by planes? Who's behind this plan, unless if it is going to be an appeasement for the Jewish inside Israel in order to overcome obstacles faced by his cabinet inside, and this would exploit any peaceful settlement for the Middle East, as well as the Abraham Agreement that is about to be cancelled or to be freezed. And by UAE and others, Sudan and Morocco rejected the statement, and the Egyptian Arab movement will be taking place in the upcoming days in the Arab and Islamic conventions in the upcoming periods.
So what potential long-term consequences could the United States' suggestion for resettling Palestinians from Gaza have, and how might it affect regional stability?
This proposal isn't going to a space of addressing or approval. Egypt and Jordan has a very unwavering stance from the first moment. In Egypt, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi explicitly announced that this is not going to allow or tolerate the displacement of the Palestinian either in Egypt or Jordan, as well as Jordan said Palestine for the Palestinians, and therefore any attempt of displacing 6 million from the West End Strip is going to be failed. No country in the world is going to accept any Palestinian out of their homeland, and such a proposal means a liquidation of the Palestinian cause and the return of the square of chaos and the Palestinian escalation. So we found 700,000 Palestinians returned from the south to the north in 2 days. Any hurdles in the directions of escalation, imposing sanctions and levies, or several positions of Trump will be faced by an Arab and international rejections, and America might lose its friends in the Middle East, particularly that all U.S. allies, including Turkey, rejected such proposals and plans, and they cannot be accepted. It's all just and the issue is just the facts on the ground, which on the contrary, what Trump nor Netanyahu would expect. So 6 million cannot leave their homelands, and to change the equation, along with the EU, Russia and China will move in the pressure, and therefore what has been proposed by Trump is unrealistic.
Yes. Well, we have breaking news, so we're going to go back to Hani in the studio. Back to you, Hani.
Thank you, Hela. Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt our bulletin for now, for we are moving to a live broadcast of a White House briefing by the Press Secretary, Caroline Levitt. Let's watch.
According to CNN, President Trump is getting more cabinet picks confirmed so far than the average president in the modern era. Another success story. And we believe it's critical that Republicans in the Senate majority stay tough and keep their foot on the gas to confirm all of the remaining nominees as quickly as possible so we can continue President Trump's important work here at the White House and across our entire federal government. And lastly, throughout his historic campaign, President Trump pledged to restore common sense to our country. And he is continuing to deliver on that with an executive order that he will sign later today. The president will be signing an executive order keeping men out of women's sports to defend the safety of athletes, protect competitive integrity, and uphold the promise of Title IX. This common sense action from President Trump ends the disgusting betrayal of women and girls by the previous administration, who for years catered to radical activists who wanted biological males to be treated as women in workplace showers, competitive sports, prisons, and even rape shelters. Gender ideology insanity is over. Submissions from individuals across the country interested in participating in our new media seat at a future briefing continue to flood in. We are at more than 12,000 and counting. If you're watching right now and are interested, you can continue to apply on our new media website, whitehouse.gov/newmedia. And in the seat today, we have a longtime national television broadcaster. I'm sure many of you recognized her when she came in, Sage Steele, who is now the host of an incredibly successful podcast, The Sage Steele Show, on YouTube and all podcast platforms. And previously, Sage was a fixture at ESPN from 2007 to 2023, primarily hosting SportsCenter, which we all know well, Before leaving the company to exercise her First Amendment rights more freely, we are honored to welcome her to the briefing room today. She will be joining the president at the big EO signing later this afternoon. I know many of you will be there as well. So Sage, why don't you kick us off on this very exciting day for women and girls across the country. Thank you for joining us.
It is exciting, and Caroline, thank you for welcoming people like me with a little bit of a different perspective, different background in this seat. It really does mean a lot. Thank you. Obviously, the House already passed the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act, which was a really big step for women and girls. So far, the Senate, as we know, has not brought it up to vote. We all know executive orders can be overturned, so I'm wondering how important it is to the president to get Congress to bring this, to pass legislation, so there are no instances like the past administration that really tried to destroy Title IX.
It's incredibly important that Congress immediately acts on this priority. I think the president is really setting the tone, making this a very immediate priority for this administration, just as he promised to do on the campaign trail. And I'd like to get into the executive order a little bit, because it is the news of the day here at the White House, and talk about what this executive action will actually do. So the executive order that the president will be signing later this afternoon, as I said, upholds the promise of Title IX. It also will require the DOJ to abide by the nationwide previous administration's illegal Title IX rewrite that would have dissolved single-sex spaces and opportunities. It also requires immediate action, including enforcement actions against schools and athletic associations comprised of schools that deny women single-sex sports in single-sex locker rooms. The executive order also calls for the convening of private sporting bodies in the White House. We want them to come to this campus so the president can hear in person the stories of female athletes who have suffered lifelong injuries, who have been silenced and forced to shower with men and compete with men on athletic fields across the country. Many of those women will be at the White House today. I encourage all of you in the media to actually talk to them, to hear their stories. And I would also just add one more thing. This is a wildly popular position with the American people. In fact, there was a new poll recently that showed the overwhelming majority of Democrats also support keeping biological men out of women's sports. And so I know the president is very excited about the bill signing that will take place at 3 o'clock this afternoon. You will hear from him more on that later, and we look forward to seeing you there, Sage. So thank you very, very much. Garrett, great to see you here today.
Thank you. On Gaza, the president has spent basically his entire public career criticizing foreign entanglements, nation building, sending American troops to fight abroad, particularly in the Middle East. This plan seems like it could ultimately involve all of those things. Can you explain this reversal and how building and owning Gaza squares with America First foreign policy?
I would reject the premise of your question that this forces the United States to be entangled in conflicts abroad. The president has not committed to putting boots on the ground in Gaza. He has also said that the United States is not going to pay for the rebuilding of Gaza. His administration is going to work with our partners in the region to reconstruct this region. And let me just take a step back here, because this is an out-of-the-box idea. That's who President Trump is. That's why the American people elected him. And his goal is lasting peace in the Middle East for all people in the region. And as I said in my opening remarks, we've had the same people pushing the same solutions to this problem for decades. And it's been made very clear to the president that the United States needs to be involved in this effort to ensure stability in the region for all people. But that does not mean boots on the ground in Gaza. It does not mean American taxpayers will be funding this effort. It means Donald Trump, who is the best deal maker on the planet, is going to strike a deal with our partners in the region.
He did not rule out American troops in Gaza last night. Are you doing that now?
I am saying that the president has not committed to that just yet. He has not made that commitment, and you know that.
And on the foreign partners, the Jordanians, the Egyptians, the Saudis have already panned this plan. What foreign partners, if any, have expressed any interest in being part of it?
Well, the president has said he's been socialing this idea for quite some time. He's been thinking about this. He said in his remarks last night, this was not a decision or an announcement that he takes lightly. And the president to the President al-Sisi. In fact, that was his first foreign leader call. He's meeting with the King of Jordan, King Abdullah, next week. He spoke with the King of Bahrain. He spoke with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, and he has made it very clear. He's vocal that he expects our partners in the region, particularly Egypt and Jordan, to accept Palestinian refugees temporarily so that we can rebuild their home. I'd like to show you some images of Gaza that were taken. Fox News aired this. I mean, that is, as they put it, an apocalyptic scene in Gaza. This is an uninhabitable place for human beings. Do you really think that families can live their dream in a region that looks like this with no running water, no electricity? And the special envoy to the president, Steve Witkoff, recently traveled to Gaza, as you all know. And he came back with images that he showed the president of the dire situation here. And the president made this decision with a humanitarian heart for all people in the region. Peter.
Thank you, Caroline. Are any officials here preparing to fight Democratic lawmakers in the streets?
Absolutely not.
So some of these,
thanks for the question.
Some elected Democrats are so steamed about Doge. Congresswoman LaMonica McIver says we are at war. Ilhan Omar says we might actually see somebody get killed. And Chris Van Hollen says we have to fight this in the Congress. We have to fight this in the streets. So what now?
And may I just point out, if you heard that type of violent, enticing from our side of the aisle, from Republican leaders on Capitol Hill, I think there would be a lot more outrage in this room today. It's unacceptable, the comments that have been made by these Democrat leaders, and frankly, they don't even know what they're talking about. Because President Trump was elected with a mandate from the American people to make this government more efficient. He campaigned across this country with Elon Musk, vowing that Elon was going to head up the Department of Government Efficiency, and the two of them, with a great team around them, were going to look at the receipts of this federal government and ensure it's accountable to American taxpayers. That's all that is happening here, and for Democrat officials to incite violence and encourage Americans to take to the streets is incredibly alarming, and they should be held accountable for that rhetoric.
It sounds like something that they're most concerned about is Doge engineers with access to Treasury systems. Can you clarify, do the Doge engineers have read-only access in these systems, so they are not allowed to write new code? No. They are not, okay. No. And then one more thing. NBC is reporting that some of the illegal immigrants that we've seen rounded up being deported, they're being released with ankle or wrist monitoring devices, or they have to check in on the phone. So is the administration arresting more people than you have room for?
I have seen the reports, and I'm glad you brought it up because we want to address it. There have been a total of 461 illegal aliens. This is of this morning when I got this information from DHS that have been released from custody. Of the more than 8,000 that have been arrested since President Trump was inaugurated, it's less than 6%. And there are reasons for their release. Some of the factors include a lack of significant likelihood of removal in the foreseeable future, lack of detention availability, which is something this president and this administration has been incredibly vocal about. We are doing everything we can to deport and detain illegal immigrants, but we need Congress's help to increase funding for Border Patrol and for ICE to increase detention capability in our facilities. And then other serious medical conditions have also been the reasons for some of the release of these individuals. But none of them have final deportation orders. Many of them are probably contesting their immigration status. I'd refer you to DHS for more details, but I did get that information because I knew it'd be a question, so thank you. Sure. Caroline? Yes.
The president, you here again today, have made clear, given the devastation, you think Palestinians have no choice but to leave Gaza and go elsewhere. But Palestinians say this is their home. They don't want to go. The president last night said he's willing to use the military if necessary. Is the U.S. prepared to remove Palestinians from Gaza by force?
The president is prepared to rebuild Gaza for Palestinians and all people in the region, peace-loving people who want real economic development. This is that has been controlled by Iranian-backed terrorists, Hamas, who have brutalized not just Israelis but Palestinians too. It is because of Hamas that you see those images on that screen, that Gaza has become a demolition site because Hamas launched that brutal attack on Israel on October the 7th. And so again, I would stress, President Trump wants to ensure that this can be a place where all people can live in peace. He made that very clear in his first term. And as for how that will be accomplished, the president and his team are talking with to consider next steps.
But should the American people be prepared to see U.S. military on the ground fighting a ground war against Hamas?
Again, the president has not committed to U.S. troops in the region.
But it is an option.
I have said that the president has not committed to that yet. Sure.
If I could just follow up on that, though, why not rule out the idea of committing U.S. troops? This has been a standing argument that the president has made really over the last decade or so, talking about endless wars and not something the U.S. wants. Why not rule out troops?
Because I think the president is very good when he's making deals and negotiating not to rule out anything, because he wants to preserve that leverage in negotiations. And so I think that's what he's doing here. Mary.
Follow up on that, though. He also said that everyone...
From Washington, D.C., that was a live broadcast of a White House briefing by the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt. The White House press secretary said Trump's proposal to control Gaza is historic. It said Gaza Strip suffers from major problems in public facilities and basic services. She added that Trump is keen for Hamas not to rule the Gaza Strip. The White House press secretary has stated that Trump is keen on achieving long-lasting peace in the Middle East. She also mentioned that Trump will sign executive orders for the country's benefit later today. And moving on with our bulletin, the Lebanese Prime Minister-designate Nawaf Salam has emphasized his commitment to forming a government that prioritizes unity, competence, and effective governance. Following a meeting with the Lebanese President, Joseph Aoun, Salam outlined his vision for a government free of internal obstacles, which he believes could hinder Lebanon's recovery. Salam further elaborated on his core objective, rebuilding Lebanon's state infrastructure and institutions. The Prime Minister-designate reiterated his focus on competence and unity, promising to form a government that will bring both technical expertise and high levels of cooperation. The UN Refugee Agency has appealed to donors to bring forward planned payments after the Trump administration put hundreds of millions of dollars of donations on hold as part of its foreign aid freeze. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, said he had asked European Union members and other countries with flexible aid procedures to accelerate their contributions to mitigate the effects of the US freeze. He said the agency deals with life-saving situations where aid cannot be interrupted for too long. These were all the news that we have for now, but here's a reminder of the main stories for today. Egypt reaffirms its position, it's firm, on the importance of rebuilding the Gaza Strip. Lebanese Prime Minister-designate Nawaf Salam commits to forming a government focused on unity, competence, and effective governance. And the UNHCR urges donors to expedite payments after the Trump administration froze hundreds of millions of dollars in aid. This concludes our news bulletin for tonight, but please don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram and TikTok at QNewsEGY to stay informed. I'm Henny Saif. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.